Hey dudes, and welcome back to the Bantz. As always, I am your host, the Bantz, and here we are once again at the beginning of another week on another Tuesday. So of course that means it is now time for our first what's happening in fashion for the week. So let's just get right into it. And of course, first up as always, let's get into our headlines for the day. And in our first headline of the day, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Los Angeles' newest boutique, and that is of course Departamento, which just recently opened up its doors for the first time. And from the looks of it, they're really diving in head first into the competition of that more high-end, that more luxury contemporary wear, as we see a bunch of brands in this store. Although some notable standouts to me would be Takahiro Miyashita the Soloist, Low, Faith Connection, among really dozens of others. And really there's not much else to say here, just once again a big congratulations to the owners of Departamento. The store looks amazing, the selection of choices in brands is also amazing as well. And as far as LA goes, especially in this scene, this contemporary high-end scene, it's always nice to see just a little bit more competition. Well, at least in my opinion. Then in our second headline of the day, let's talk more about the Peanuts Global Arts Initiative, shall we? So right off the bat, I know exactly what you're thinking. The Bantz, why are you talking about another Peanuts collaboration again? You absolutely detested all of the Peanuts collaborations before. What makes it any different now? Well, yes, you're entirely correct in the fact that after seeing literally I think 2 years now of Peanuts collaborations, I'm definitely sick of it, especially because most of those collaborations sucked. But this one here is completely different in my opinion. So to start off with, we have to go back a couple months, back to April, when this collaboration was first announced. Although back then it was just an art collective of sorts, where they had brought in 7 different artists to paint 7 different murals across 7 different cities, obviously with a Peanuts theme to them. But then recently, on top of more work out of these artists, some brands were added to the mix as well, and what has come out of it is really just remarkable in my opinion. We're seeing a whole bevy of different products coming out of this collection, and not just the standard ones you'd think of, such as art prints, and apparel. No, what we're seeing here is a whole slew of different product, including accessories. And I'm not even talking just wearable accessories such as hats or watches, and yes, they actually did watches, but I'm talking about a whole line of lifestyle accessories as well, such as thermoses, notebooks, skateboard decks, and even some sports equipment as well. Yes, they actually went that far with it. But going back to the apparel now, they did a really fantastic job with it here as well. I mean, just look at some of the names of some of the brands they brought along. I mean, we're talking Champion and Huff, just to name a few, who are both really doing very well in the collaboration game over the last year or so. And they even brought in some of the actual artists for collaboration too, such as Andre from Paris and Kenny Scharf, among many of the others, all of which whose art shines just as well in clothing as it does in a mural. And what this all boils down to, really, what the main point I wanted to get across is that this is how a collaboration should be done. I know that really since I've started this channel, I've droned on and on and on for months about just how many different collaborations out there have been bad, have been poorly executed, have just sucked. And yes, most of the Peanut ones I talked about definitely rang up there. But one thing that I've always mentioned time and time again is that if you actually put that time, that effort, that creativity into your collaborations, you can really make something beautiful, and this is just proof of that. And yes, I am completely aware that not every brand out there has the access to this amount of talent, to this amount of design or creativity. But that's not necessarily the point. Because as you can see here, they really outdid themselves almost to a hyperbolic point. But if you were to condense this collaboration down really to maybe just the accessories and the apparel, it'd still be just absolutely amazing. The reason being because, once again, they brought in some creative people who were willing to put that time and effort in instead of just slapping a graphic on a dip-tied tee, for example. Gee, I wonder who possibly did that recently. So all I can really say is that if you ever go on to do a collaboration yourself, be it through art, be it through fashion, or be it through any other medium, just use this as an example, as a hallmark, if you will. Just always remember, never be lazy about your work, whether it be your solo work or your collaborative work. This is you're putting out there, and look at how well it can be done when done correctly. Nobody wants your shit if it's stupid and lazy and boring and done before. Believe me, look at all the streetwear brands out there already doing that, and look how well most of them are succeeding. All you need to do is just put in that time and effort and work and creativity, and maybe one day even you will be able to make something as good as this. Sorry, that did get a little bit sappy toward the end there, but my point really does remain the same. Just gonna throw a the more you know image up here and call it a day. You guys are old enough to remember what that is, right? All right, and with our headlines done, let's now move on to our art stories for the day. And first up, we just recently saw the trailer drop for Kusama Infinity, the biographical documentary on, of course, legendary Japanese artist Yayoi Kusama, and I do have to say, it looks incredible. Definitely go check out this trailer, and if you happen to be living in one of the bigger cities, it's actually already showing in some theaters, so I definitely check out for that as well. Then photographer Johnny Miller showed off some of his newest photographs taken by a drone, which do a very nice job of showing the juxtaposition between two socio-economic worlds that happen to live literally right next to each other. Makes for some very interesting photographs, and if that sounds interesting to you, definitely look into these. And lastly, Hypebeast sat down for an interview with artist James Evans to talk a little bit about his history, his past work, some of his ideas, his inspirations, and so on. So if that sounds interesting to you, or want to just see some more of his work in general, I definitely check into this as well. Okay, and now moving back into our fashion section for the day. First up, brand Golf Wang showed off their fall-winter 2018 collection, and I thought it was pretty good. Though I do have to say that when I look over this collection, it really does feel a lot like Stussy. But then again, looking over a lot of Golf Wang collections, I'd say that they look a lot like Stussy. I would even be willing to call Golf Wang Stussy too, if they ever decided to change their name. But all joking aside, I really don't mean that as a bad thing here. When I think of Stussy, I think of that more kind of streetwear-esque, but still a little bit more mature, a little bit more grown-up style that so many brands have been doing fairly well nowadays. Brands such as obviously Golf Wang here and obviously Stussy, but also brands such as Palace and Wacko Maria and This Is Never That, and that other brand that shall no longer be named. But they're more just trying to attempt this style because God knows anybody there trying to create anything couldn't create an actual clothing line if they tried. But going back to the collection at hand now, we see a variety of different styles mixed in with a bunch of different silhouettes, resulting in some really nice outfits in my opinion. We also see plenty of color pop as well as some nice all-over prints, all done in a variety of styles, which Golf Wang has pretty much become synonymous with because of just how well they do it. And yes, even if this does feel a little bit more mature, a little bit more grown up than many prior seasons of Golf Wang, I really do think that Tyler has done a very nice job of evolving the brand into what it is today, where they can still wear the old stuff along with the new stuff, and just based on the color palette alone can mix it all into an outfit or even a style that works. So if you have been looking for some nice new pieces of streetwear to add to your collection, especially if you enjoy a little bit more color to your palette, and especially if you're looking for a little bit more of a more older, mature looking streetwear, then definitely check out this collection. Some really nice pieces in here. And speaking of color pop, brand Aime Leon Dore showed off their fall winter 2018 collection, and they did just another wonderful job here. in this collection, we see a whole bunch of different styles ranging from slight tech wear to contemporary, as they're known for, and even a little bit of that 90s revival mixed in as well. And it really doesn't matter what style you decide to choose when it comes down to the use of color blocking, of a much brighter color palette. It's pretty much spread out fairly evenly among all of these different outfits and works pretty well among all of them too. And I do really have to point out here that if you were a fan of that Kith and Tommy Hilfiger collaboration that I just recently talked about, definitely check out this collection as well, because there are a lot of similarities among the two collections. Am I saying that one brand or another brand stole or copied the ideas from one another? No, absolutely not. These came out in such quick succession that it was probably pretty much impossible to do such a thing, especially seeing as that both these brands are on opposite sides of the pond from each other. But I think it comes down to just that 90s revival look, which obviously Tommy Hilfiger did first, and we see Aime Leon Dore kind of picking up here as well. But unlike the Kith collaboration, which really felt fairly synonymous with the Tommy Hilfiger brand, the more color block 90s revival prep we see out of Aime here definitely feels more their own, because they have their own unique style, their own unique flavor, their own unique use of colors and color palettes. And really, I think it's a very synonymous collection to the other one, but also very different, very unique, and very creative as well. Especially when you factor in the fact that that's not the only style in this collection, it's just a large majority of it. So once again, if you are looking to add a little bit more color to your collection, although looking for definitely something a little bit more adult than the Golf Wang we just talked about, definitely check out this collection. Some very nice and interesting pieces in here as well. Then brand MidiumiSolid showed off their fall-winter 2018 collection, and it was definitely interesting, to say the least. Taking a quick glance over this lookbook, it won't be surprising to see some very interesting things in here, whether it be some interesting design choices, silhouettes, or even some very interesting use of different materials or textiles. But even though some of these pieces, especially more of those one-off pieces, are definitely very intriguing and very creative, they just don't work together wholly as a collection, in my opinion. This is definitely one of those diamond in the rough collections that I talk about. There are definitely plenty of pieces in this collection that have a ton of wearability, especially more of those, once again, one-off pieces, which could really fit in nicely to any collection of anybody who's a fan of more maximalized ideas and styles. But those pieces really are more of a double-edged sword in this collection. They really retract from the rest of the collection and make the more cohesive pieces feel just rather kind of boring, which is really rather unfortunate, because even some of the more boring pieces in this collection are still fairly interesting. They are just completely overdone by those one-off pieces. As a brand that has shown off some very interesting designs and very interesting styles before, this is by no means nothing new. I just take it as a little bit of a rough patch, because you can definitely tell they wanted to do something very unique with this collection. They just kind of overdid it in certain pieces here. But even so, if you are a fan of those more interesting designs, or maybe just a fan of fashion design in general, definitely check out this collection and even some of their past collections. Some really nice work here. Unfortunately, it just doesn't all work here. And lastly, and just really quickly, I just wanted to cover the brand Cherry Los Angeles. Not any lookbook necessarily, because if you've ever followed the brand, you know just how really terrible it is. I just really wanted to address more of the publications out there, such as the Hypebeast, the High Snobs, and everything in between. I don't know how much these guys are paying you to show off their brand, but can you just stop accepting it? Whatever amount of money they're paying you definitely isn't worth just showing off this dribble. It's just so bad, so uninspired, and just so fucking outplayed by so many other brands who've already done this to death and still suck. So just imagine how I feel about this brand. Can we just really stop with the publications? I mean, it's just so fucking bad, and it can't be worth the time and effort for the pennies they give you to show off this crap. If anything, it just makes you guys look worse than you already are. And that too is saying something. But I guess with all of that now out of the way, let's now move on to our articles for the day. And first up, the Business of Fashion did a very nice rundown on what it means to embrace circular economy in fashion, which basically in layman's terms just goes back to sustainability and just how a brand can help prevent the impact on environmental change through their brand, obviously. And they go over a nice bit of different information as well as different points that if you're a brand owner or looking to get into branding in fashion, especially on the more sustainable side, what you can do or what you can do to help. And overall, very interesting article. If you are a fan of sustainability, definitely worth a read. Then Grailed put out a list of some of their favorite collaborations between fashion companies and different restaurants and food brands. Really an interesting take, which you may have seen a couple times before in the past, but if you wanted to know a little bit more about these collaborations, I'd definitely check this out. And lastly, Fashionista put out a very interesting article going over interviews with designers that all started their brands during the 2008 recession and how they've been able to strive since then. If you've ever been interested in going into fashion, or maybe you're just having trouble building up your brand now, I would definitely take a look over this. It might have some very insightful information for you. Alright, and with that, we reached the end of our first What's Happening in Fashion for the week. I hope you guys have enjoyed, and as always, if you want to read any of the articles I talked about today or see any more images from lookbooks I wasn't able to include, I've linked everything in the description down below. And if you are new here, then welcome. We do these What's Happening in Fashion videos twice a week at the beginning and end of the week, plus another occasional video here or there. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, feel free to subscribe. Otherwise, if you just have any questions, comments, concerns, or even just want to talk fashion at all, feel free to hit me up in the comments. I'm always willing to talk fashion. And once again, guys, thank you so much for watching these videos and supporting all of my content. I hope you all have a great week ahead of you, and as always, until next time.